The cold wind howled outside the old wooden cabin. Snow fell thick, covering the trees and the narrow path that led up the mountain. Inside, David sat by the fireplace, the only warmth in the dark forest around him. His hands were wrapped around a metal cup of hot tea. He hadn't spoken to anyone in weeks, not since he left the city. He liked the silence, the peace, the way no one expected anything from him anymore. But that night, something broke the silence. 3 slow knocks, soft but clear, echoed through the wooden walls. Knock, knock, knock. David looked up, his heart skipping a beat. No one ever came here, not this far out. He stood up, carefully grabbed his old hunting knife and stepped toward the door. "Who's there?" He called out, but no one answered. He opened the door slowly, the icy wind slapping his face as he peeked out into the night. And then he saw her, an alien woman, tall but thin, her body shaking from cold and exhaustion. She was wearing a torn cloak wet from snow, and in her arms, something small was wrapped in cloth. She didn't speak, just looked at him with glowing purple eyes full of fear. Then, without a word, she collapsed onto the snow. The bundle in her arms rolled out and hit the porch softly. It let out a weak cry. It was a baby. David stared in shock, the knife still in his hand. He had seen aliens before, during the war years ago, but never like this. Never so broken, so helpless. The baby's skin shimmered with a strange glow, its eyes large and blinking slowly. David cursed under his breath and dropped the knife. He knelt down, gently picked up the baby, and then lifted the mother over his shoulder. He carried them both inside, kicking the door shut behind him. He laid the mother on the couch near the fire. She was unconscious, breathing shallow and fast. Her skin was cold to the touch, and he saw strange bruises along her arms and neck. The baby whimpered again, so he wrapped it in a thick towel and held it close to the flames. It stopped crying and looked at him, blinking slowly like it trusted him. "Who are you?" he whispered, but got no answer. He checked the mother again, sure what to do. He knew first aid, but not for aliens. Still, he cleaned the dirt from her face, covered her with a blanket, and hoped she would wake up soon. He stared at the strange symbol burned into her shoulder, 3 jagged lines inside a circle. It looked familiar, like something he saw in enemy uniforms years ago. He didn't like it. He didn't like any of this, but he couldn't throw them out into the snow even. If it meant danger, even if someone was chasing them, he made some warm milk for the baby, and to his surprise, the child drank it slowly. That made him smile a little. She was small, but strong. He saw a bit of her mother in her eyes, something scared but brave later that night. While the fire crackled, David sat by the window, watching the trees. Snow was still falling, but he could hear something branches snapping in the distance. It was too soft for any normal animal, too careful. Like someone was watching the cabin. He loaded his rifle and placed it near the door, and he looked at the mother, still sleeping. And the baby resting on his bed. "What did you bring to my door?" he whispered. But deep inside, he knew this wasn't a random visit. They had come here for a reason, and something else was coming too. He didn't know who or what, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to let them take the baby, not without a fight. The fire had burned low, casting long shadows on the cabin walls. David was half asleep in his chair, the rifle close by, his boots still on. The alien mother was still unconscious, her breathing slow but steady. The baby had fallen asleep wrapped in blankets near the warm hearth. For the first time that night, everything was quiet, too quiet. Then it happened. A sound broke the silence, soft at first, like a distant wind, then louder, rising in pitch. Until it filled the room, the baby cried, but not like before this time. It was strange, almost musical, echoing in waves through the cabin. It didn't sound human or even animal. It sounded like a signal. David jumped up, heart racing. He rushed to the child and tried to calm her, rocking her gently. It's okay, he whispered, but the glow on her skin had returned. A pale purple light was rising from her chest, pulsing. In rhythm with the cry outside, something answered. David froze. A low hum, deep and vibrating, came from the trees. It wasn't a voice, but it wasn't natural either. The kind of sound he'd only heard during the war when alien machines moved through forests hunting survivors. He snatched up his rifle, peered out the window, and scanned the woods. Snow still fell, but now it seemed to avoid a spot near the edge of the trees. Something was standing there, tall, still, watching. Its eyes glowed red, faint behind the branches, and then, just like that, it vanished. David backed away from the window, hands tight on the gun. The baby had stopped crying. The glow fading slowly, he looked down at her, confused and afraid. "What are you?" he whispered. She blinked up at him, innocent and calm. But her small hands sparked with faint energy. That same mark was still glowing on her chest, the same one burned into her mother's skin. David turned toward the alien woman, who suddenly twitched in her sleep, her lips moved, her eyes fluttering. She was waking up. He knelt beside her, worried. Hey, you're safe now. You're inside," he said softly. Her eyes opened slowly, filled with panic and pain. She tried to sit up but groaned and fell back. She looked around the room, then locked eyes with the child. Her face changed from fear to relief, then quickly to terror. She grabbed David's wrist with surprising strength and whispered, "The signal." Her voice was rough, like someone who hadn't spoken in weeks. They heard her cry. She said, "Who?" David asked, already knowing the answer. "The ones who hunt her," she said. "The ones who made her." David sat back, stunned. "You brought her here," he said. "You brought them here?" She nodded weakly, tears in her eyes. There was nowhere else. She said, "She's not just my child. She's important. She's a beacon." David stood, pacing the cabin, thinking hard. He had fought in one war and barely survived it. Now another might be coming to his door. But this time, he wasn't alone. This time, he had someone to protect. Suddenly, the baby let out a soft hum again. It was gentle this time, almost like a lullaby. But David noticed something else. His old radio in the corner crackled. It hadn't worked in years. Now it was picking up something. A voice came through, static and broken. "Location confirmed. Retrieve the asset." David's blood ran cold. They weren't just coming. They were already nearby. He turned to the alien woman, her eyes wide with fear again. "How long do we have?" he asked. "Not long," she whispered. "Once she cries, they never stop hunting." David looked at the baby, now asleep again. Glowing softly, he took a deep breath and loaded the rifle. "They come," he said. "They'll find me waiting." The cabin was quiet again, but David couldn't sleep. He sat near the fireplace, rifle across his lap. Eyes heavy but alert, the baby was sleeping in a basket near the fire, wrapped in blankets, glowing faintly like a sleeping star outside. Snow had stopped falling, but the forest was still too silent. Even the wind held its breath every few minutes. He glanced toward the couch where the alien mother lay. Her breathing had become steadier, and the color had returned to her cheeks, but she hadn't spoken again since that whisper, the signal. David didn't know if she would survive the night. He also didn't know if he would. Suddenly, a sharp gasp broke the silence. David stood up fast, hand gripping the rifle. The alien woman was awake, sitting up halfway. Her eyes wide and unfocused, she looked around, panicked. Like she didn't know where she was. Her mouth opened, lips trembling, and then she spoke one word. Barely louder than a whisper. "Hunter." David froze. It wasn't just fear in her voice, it was memory, pain, and hate. That single word carried the weight of everything she had been through. He moved toward her slowly, lowering the rifle. "You're safe now," he said softly, but her eyes flicked past him. Toward the baby, her hands moved fast, reaching out to the child. David stepped aside. Letting her crawl toward the basket, she held the baby gently and began to hum a strange melody, the same one the baby had made when she cried. "Is that her name?" David asked. "Hunter?" The woman shook her head. "No," she said. "That's who's coming." David crouched beside her. "Tell me what's going on," he said. The woman took a slow breath and looked into the fire. "She is not normal," she whispered. "She was created." David's eyes narrowed. "Created? Like made in a lab?" The woman nodded. "Not born the natural way," she said. They made her to sense energy, to find things, to open things. She is a key. David tried to understand. A key to what? He asked. But the woman didn't answer. She just stared into the fire like it held the truth. They want her back, she finally said. They always come for the key. David sat back, his thoughts racing. So you ran away with her? He said. The woman nodded. I was one of them, she said, her voice soft. One of the mothers. They picked us from slave camps, made us carry these children. But when I saw her, when she opened her eyes, I knew she was more than a weapon. David felt his chest tighten. He remembered the camps, the broken colonies, the things the enemy did to prisoners during the war. He remembered the stories no one believed about breeding labs, about alien tech grown from living bodies, but he had never seen one before now. One of those stories was lying on his floor, wrapped in blankets, glowing like a star. She trusts you, the woman said suddenly, looking at David. She didn't cry when you held her. David looked away, unsure what to say. I didn't do anything special, he said. You didn't have to, she said. She feels truth outside. The wind picked up again, but this time it wasn't cold. It was strange, like something moving through the air without making sound. David stood and walked to the window. Far in the trees he saw a flicker of red light. Then another, and another. 3 red dots blinking slowly in the dark. They've found us, he whispered. The woman clutched the child tighter and said one more word. Hi. David moved quickly, locking the door, checking the windows. He threw extra logs on the fire, hoping the smoke would confuse any scanners. He took the baby from the woman and handed her his thickest coat. Get in the back, he said. There's a cellar under the floorboards. She nodded and crawled toward the hidden door. David handed her a flashlight and helped her down. I'll hold them off, he said. The woman looked up at him, eyes full of worry. Don't let them touch her, she said. Not even once. David closed the trapdoor, covered it with a rug, and turned to face the cabin door. He picked up his rifle and took a deep breath. Outside, the red lights grew brighter. The hunters had arrived, and he was ready. Asterisk, the night air was still, but David could hear it. Crunch, crunch, footsteps, heavy and slow. Moving through the snow like they didn't care who heard them. It's like they were already sure nothing could stop them. David crouched near the front window. Eyes locked on the tree line. The red lights had vanished, but the sound had not. He could hear breathing, now deep. Mechanical, almost rhythmic. It didn't sound human. It didn't sound natural either. His finger rested lightly on the trigger of his old rifle. He had cleaned it, checked the sights, and loaded his last 3 rounds. Behind him, the cellar. Door remained shut under the rug, below. The alien mother and her child waited in silence. He could only hope they stayed quiet, because whatever was outside, it was getting closer. David turned to the back door, just in case. Then something made his blood freeze, scratched into the wood outside. Just under the front window were words written in a language only soldiers from the last war would remember. Return. The key. David backed away slowly. He didn't hear them write it. Didn't hear any tools or claws. They had been that close, and he didn't notice. His breath came out in steam as he whispered, Not tonight. Suddenly something slammed against the back wall. Not the door, but the wooden wall itself. A loud thud, strong enough to shake. The floor. David swung around, gun raised, then silence. He ran to the back room and pulled open the small slot on the wall. Outside, he saw a tall figure walking slowly around the cabin. Its body was covered in armor, dark, jagged, and glowing. Faintly red at the joints, its face was a helmet with no eyes, no mouth. Just a single red line across the center, and strapped to its back was something worse. A living scanner, a creature with eyes all over its face. Sniffing the air like a dog, the scanner paused near the house and let out a long clicking sound. David ducked down, holding his breath. He heard the creature move toward the porch, step by step. Then the knock came again. Not soft like before, but strong, sharp, demanding. Knock, knock, knock. David didn't answer. The knock came again, louder this time, then silence. He peeked through the side window and saw something terrifying. The scanner was drooling a thick, green liquid as it sniffed the front door. It moved lower, crawling across the wood like a spider. Then it stopped. Its many eyes locked directly on the spot where the rug covered the cellar door. David didn't think he acted. He kicked the front door open and fired a shot. The bullet hit the scanner in the neck. Throwing it backward into the snow, the armored hunter turned quickly, lifting a weapon from its side. But David was already behind cover, heart pounding. The forest exploded in sound. More footsteps, fast and loud, moving from every direction. 3 more figures came through the trees. All armored, all glowing red, but they didn't rush the cabin. They surrounded it. They were trapping him. David cursed and dropped down beside the couch. He grabbed the last grenade he had doled Tech. Unstable, but better than nothing. He pulled the pin halfway, waiting. His mind raced with options. He didn't have many, but he had one advantage. He knew the land better than they did. David kicked, opened the back door, and ran toward the barn. He knew they'd follow. That's what he wanted. He needed to draw them away from the cabin. From the mother and her child, as he ran, snow crunching beneath his boots. He looked back. The red lights were following, fast and deadly. He slid into the barn and set the trap. Tripwire on the entrance, grenade ready. Then he climbed up into the rafters and waited. Seconds later, the first hunter entered, then the second, then the third. Click, the wire snapped, the grenade dropped. And the barn lit up in fire and noise. David jumped out the back window, rolling in the snow as the flames rose behind him. Didn't stop running until he reached the cabin. Again, panting, bleeding from his arm, but alive. He opened the cellar door and looked down. "They're not done," he said. "But now they know I'm not easy to take." The alien mother stared up at him. "You risked everything," she said. David nodded, wiping blood from his brow. "She's not just yours anymore," he said. "She's ours now, and deep in the forest." Where the fire burned and smoke rose into the sky, one last red light blinked through the trees, watching, learning, waiting. The trees stood tall like silent guards, their branches heavy with snow. The path ahead was narrow, winding between frozen roots and deep shadows. David walked in front, rifle in hand, eyes scanning every sound, every movement. Behind him, the alien mother carried her child close to her chest, wrapped tightly in blankets. The baby no longer glowed, not brightly, not yet, but David knew it was only a matter of time. They had left the cabin before sunrise. The attack last night had proved. One thing, the hunters were getting smarter. Waiting in the cabin meant death, so now they moved deeper into the woods. Toward the only place David believed they might be safe. Hidden shelter built during the war, off-grid, no power signals, buried under old stone and ice. Even he had trouble finding it again, but if they reached it, they could hide, maybe even survive. The baby let out a soft sound, something like a sigh. David stopped and turned around. "She okay?" he asked. The mother nodded, but her eyes showed fear. "She's quiet now," she said, "but when she wakes, the glow might return." David didn't reply. He just picked up the pace. Hours passed, each step harder than the last. Snow came. Down again, thick and blinding. David could barely see 2 feet ahead, then behind them. A sound broke through the storm. Snap, crunch, heavy, slow footsteps, too heavy for snow. David motioned for the mother to get down. They crouched behind. A fallen log, holding their breath, through the white curtain of snow, a dark shape moved. One of the hunters, walking slow, scanning the ground. Its armor hissed with steam as it stepped. Its red light scanned the snow for heat. David didn't move, didn't breathe. The baby made the smallest sound, a hiccup. The hunter paused, head tilting like a machine sensing vibration. David raised his rifle slowly. Hand steady, even as snow piled on his shoulders. He waited, counting each second like a lifetime. Then, a noise from the trees distant, but loud, a falling branch. The hunter turned toward it and began moving again. It vanished into the white. David exhaled, slow and careful. That was too close, much too close. They waited 10 more minutes before moving again. Every footstep was slower now, every breath heavier. The cold began to bite deeper. The alien mother stumbled once, falling. To her knees, David rushed to help her. "I'm fine," she whispered, "just tired." David looked at the baby, now blinking again. The glow had returned. Faint but visible under the blankets. "She's warming up," the mother said softly. "It happens when she feels fear," David nodded. "Then we keep her calm," he said. "We stay quiet." Finally, just before dusk, they found the ridge. A large rock formation covered in snow, trees growing out of the cracks. David knelt and brushed snow away from a flat stone. He tapped twice, then slid the slab aside, revealing a narrow tunnel under the rock. "Here," he said. "This is it." They crawled inside, the passage tight and dark. At the end was a small room carved from stone. Dry and hidden, old supplies still lay their blankets. Canned food, a rusted radio. David closed the entrance with a slab and sat down hard. They had made it for now. The mother unwrapped the baby, who stretched and yawned, her glow filled the space with a soft purple light. David looked at her, amazed once again. "She's stronger than I thought," he said. "She's becoming more than they planned." The mother replied. David raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "She's learning," the mother said, "faster than she should." Suddenly, the radio sparked. David froze. The radio hadn't worked in years. It had no power source, but it lit up with static, and a voice came through, broken and cold. "Unit 3, scan complete. Target is still active." David slammed it off. "They're tracking her without machines now," he whispered. The mother nodded slowly. "They don't need tools," she said. "They trained her to connect, and now she's connecting to everything." David looked at the baby, who smiled up at him with glowing eyes. "She's not just the key anymore," the mother said. "She's waking up." David stood up, checked his weapon, and walked to the tunnel entrance. They weren't safe, not really. They were just ahead, and the moment the baby truly woke up, the entire world might come looking. Asterisk, the shelter was still. Carved deep beneath the ridge like a forgotten cave, David sat by the wall, sharpening a knife with slow, tired hands. The fire in the corner was small, giving just enough warmth to keep the cold away. The alien mother held her child close. Humming softly, the baby's glow had dimmed. But it never fully disappeared, like a tiny sun hiding under the blankets. Always waiting. It had been 2 days since they escaped the cabin, 2 days of quiet, of holding their breath and praying the hunters had lost the trail. But David knew better. He'd seen the way they worked during the war. They didn't stop, they didn't sleep, and they never gave up once a target had been marked. As he stood to check the supplies, his eyes landed on the old radio in the corner. He hadn't touched it since the last static message, but now he needed help. He couldn't protect them forever with only 3 bullets and a knife. And hiding wouldn't work forever. David walked over, knelt beside the radio, and pulled off the cover. Dust puffed out into the air. The wires inside were half rusted, but he'd fixed worse. He rewired the antenna using some scrap from an old lantern, then connected the battery from his flashlight. The screen lit up dimly. Static filled the room. The mother looked up sharply. "What are you doing?" she asked, voice full of worry. "Calling someone," David said, "someone who might still care." He tuned the dial slowly, listening for any voice, any sign of life. At first, there was only noise. Then, a soft voice, crackling through the static. "This is Outpost Delta 4. Repeat Delta for receiving unknown signal." David's heart jumped. He pressed the button and spoke. "This is David Pierce, former combat engineer. I'm requesting assistance. I have 2 civilians with min-inhuman being hunted." Silence followed. Then a new voice replied, deeper, sharper. "I identify the non-human life forms." David paused. "They're not enemies." He said, "One is a mother, the other is her child." There was another pause. "Is the child marked?" the voice asked. David's eyes narrowed. "What do you know about that?" he asked. "We've been tracking signals like hers," the voice said. "She's not the only one." David stepped back from the radio, confused and alarmed. "What do you mean?" he asked. "She's not the only one they created," the voice said. "There are others hidden, scattered across the galaxy. Some already captured, some not as lucky. The mother stood now, holding the child close. David looked at her. "She's special, isn't she?" he asked. The woman nodded slowly. "She's more than a key now," she whispered. "She's a message." Before David could reply, the radio crackled again. "We can extract you," the voice said. "Send your location." David hesitated. It sounded too easy, too fast, too clean. He turned the dial slightly, just enough to shift the signal without cutting it, and what he heard next chilled his blood. Unit 7 confirming signal lock. Human asset located. Prepare retrieval. Squad. It wasn't a rescue, it was a trap. David yanked the battery out of the radio and smashed the receiver with his boot. The sound cut off instantly. The mother looked at him, eyes wide. They were listening. He nodded. "I just told them." "Exactly where we are." Outside, the wind picked up too fast, too strong. David ran to the entrance of the tunnel and peered through the cracks. In the sky above the trees, a silent ship floated. Its black surface reflected no light, no noise. Only the red blink of a tracking beacon right above their shelter. "They're here," he whispered. The baby began to cry, her glow flashing through the blankets like a warning, and this time, the ground itself began to tremble. The mother dropped to her knees, holding the child tight. David grabbed his gear and turned to face the tunnel. "We're not staying here," he said. "We move now, but where?" The mother asked. David didn't have a full answer. He just knew one thing. Staying meant death. Running meant a chance. And as the red light from the sky grew larger, he made a silent vow. He would protect them, no matter what. Even if the whole galaxy came hunting. The forest burned behind them. Flames stretched high into the night sky. Black smoke rolled across the snow like crawling shadows. David ran ahead, boots sinking deep into frozen earth. His breath came in short bursts, every muscle screaming. But he didn't stop. Behind him, the alien mother held the glowing baby close. Her feet stumbled through thick roots and uneven ground. Still, she never let go. The child had stopped crying, but her glow now burned brighter than ever, like a beacon, like a flare for the enemy to follow. Above them, the ship floated silently. No engine sounds, no warning, just the soft red lights blinking in rhythm. It followed slowly, not trying to catch them fast. Because it didn't have to, it knew they had nowhere left to run. David spotted the old outpost ahead, half buried in snow. Forgotten by time, he kicked the door in, pulled the others inside, and slammed it shut behind them, dust and rust filled. The air? It was cold and dark, but solid. Steel walls. Reinforced from the war it would hold, for a little while. He looked out the window. The ship had landed. Dark shapes stepped out, tall and armored, their red eyes scanning the trees. The hunters had come. David turned to the mother. "You trust me?" he asked. She nodded, eyes wide with fear but no hesitation. "Then give her to me," he said. She clutched the child tighter. For a moment she didn't move. Then slowly, gently, she placed the baby into David's arms. The child looked up. At him, glowing bright like sunrise, trapped in skin, David felt something inside shift. Not fear, not duty, something more. "I'm not just a soldier anymore," he whispered. "I'm her father now, outside." The hunters approached the door. Their weapons were ready. Their scanners beeped louder as they neared. David looked around the outpost. Old systems, half-dead consoles, but one terminal still blinked weakly. He moved fast, placed the baby on the panel, and pressed a key. "What are you doing?" the mother asked. "She's a key," David said. "Let's make her open something they don't expect." The baby's glow pulsed with the terminal's rhythm. Suddenly, the system roared to life. Lights flashed, engines hummed. A message blinked across the screen. "Genesis protocol armed." "What is that?" the mother whispered. David turned, his voice steady. "A war weapon," he said. "Built to destroy tracking tech across 100 miles. A full blackout field. Once it launches, they won't be able to find her again, but—" "You'll be here," she said. He nodded. "I have to stay." She grabbed his arm, his eyes wide with panic. "No," she said. "We'll find another way. There is no other way." David said, "This is it." The baby looked up at him, glow fading slightly, like she understood. He smiled down at her. "Hey," he whispered. You're going to grow up free. You'll never be anyone's weapon. It's not while I'm still breathing. He handed the child back to the mother,
Ow.
then opened the hidden tunnel at the back of the outpost. Follow the stream. He said, 3 miles east. There's an old contact who might help use this. He handed her a beacon with a false ID. They'll think you're just another refugee. She stared at him, tears building in her eyes. Why are you doing this? David smiled, but it was tired because no one did it for me, he said. Then he turned back toward the console. The door behind him rattled, metal bending under force. Red lights spilled through the cracks. They're here, he whispered. He pressed the final command, activating Genesis. The mother hesitated only a second more, then turned and ran into the tunnel. The baby didn't cry. She just blinked once, her light fading gently like stars at dawn. David stood alone in the outpost, rifle in hand, eyes locked on the door. The hunters burst in, weapons raised, but before a shot was fired, the sky above exploded in light. A wave of energy tore through the land, every scanner, every tracker, every signal gone. The hunters screamed, blind, lost in the dark, and David, standing tall, smiled one last time, outside. The forest lit up with silence, the ship powered, down, never to rise again. And far away, under a quiet sky, a mother held her child and whispered, "He saved us."